Afternoon and welcome. I'm Andrea Sampson, the CEO of Talk Boutique and your host and moderator of today's conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, this is a really special segment of our virtual speaker series today. Many of us have been watching the events unfold south of the border with the murder of George Floyd and the ensuing civil unrest prompted by the lack of governmental support and leadership. And so many of us have been saddened, and truly we feel helpless. The reality is that this situation has uncovered the systemic racism that is rampant within our society and that many of us have been ignorant to. I myself have been educating myself on much of what's happened and have come to understand my own complicity in this very problem. And it is a problem that needs to be addressed. At Talk Boutique, we believe that conversations can truly change the world. And because of this, our Director of Relationship Development, John Robinson Jr., approached me on Tuesday of this week to create what he called a courageous conversation on the topic of anti-racism. And so here we are. Let me introduce you to John. He's an expert at relationship development and empowerment. He's the author of Joy and Love and a deeply valued leader on our team. John, please start this important conversation. So many of us want to hear what your thoughts are on this. And again, I encourage, as you're listening, to enter in any questions that you have. John.
Thank you, Andrea. That was a beautiful introduction. Today, we're going to have a conversation about anti-racism from the perspective of a Black man living in Toronto, Canada. All Black men have had unique experiences. We've all experienced some type of racism in our lives. We all know what it feels like to walk behind a woman on a sidewalk only for them to clutch their purse and walk across the street. We know what it feels like to walk into an elevator to find a different woman. And this time in our mind, we're thinking, what can we do to make her feel at peace and comfortable because we don't want to scare her or come across as a threat? This dual mindset about our own sanity and the consideration for others should not be necessary. And to be frank and honest, it can be traumatic. I, for one, had too many of these experiences that at first might seem like nuances. However, I don't have to think too hard about a specific recent example that I could share with you today, because unfortunately, it just happened 2 weeks ago. It was mid-May, and the day was much like today, super sunny after a long, cold winter. Couple that with the pandemic, and getting outside was a treat. It was very special. And as I was going for my afternoon walk to the grocery store, I'm feeling good. The birds were chirping. I was waving to the neighbors. All was good in the world. So as I was returning back to my condo with groceries in hand, the security guard pulls me to the side and he says, is it okay if we could have a chat? And I was like, sure, as long as you keep your 6 feet social distance, it's all good. What would you like to chat about? And he says to me, we've noticed that there are some weights missing in the exercise room. And we know you like to exercise, and one of our staff members thinks that it was you that took them. Do you mind returning the weights, he says. And my jaw dropped. I'm still a little emotional about it. I was like, no, I did not steal the weights. I'm terribly offended, and why would you think I stole them? But I'm not naive. It didn't take me too long to realize to myself that, you know what? I live in a building with about 600 residents, and it's predominantly white, which is all good. And after living here for 5 years, I noticed that there might be about 2 Black people that live in this building, and out of the 2, I'm the one that likes to exercise. So when you filter it down by race, it's clear as to why I became the lead suspect. So I had a couple of words with the security guard. However, I knew I wasn't talking to the right person. Considering we're in a pandemic, the property manager's office was not accepting visitors at the office store. So I wrote her an email, and I wrote it in a very professional manner. However, I called it for what it was. It was a racial accusation that I did not appreciate. The property manager wrote back immediately, literally 4 minutes later, and her response was, "Hi, John. I'm not racist, and I don't think my staff is racist. This is probably just one big misunderstanding. Now, the property manager is white, and believe me, for a visible minority, we've had quite the share of misunderstandings because of the color of our skin. I wrote her again, explaining to her that her response was biased, it was not empathetic, and to make such a statement without any form of an investigation was inappropriate. And she responded again by letting me know that she just couldn't help me any further and I was to stop emailing the office. So I escalated it, of course. I wrote the district manager at head office and finally received a response with the empathy and an apology that I was originally looking for. But even though I received that, it still doesn't make it right. So today, I'm going to talk to you about the importance of understanding anti-racism and how to transition from passive, non-racist behaviors to active involvement to ensure racist behaviors are called out. The reason why this is so important is that Black communities around the world can get justice against brutality and trauma and create a society where equality across all races are accepted and received. So what is the difference between being non-racist and being an anti-racist? Let's look at the murder case of George Floyd. Derek Chauvin, the officer that had his knee on George Floyd's neck, clearly had a disregard for George's life because of the color of his skin. He looked at him as less than human. For 8 minutes and 46 seconds, he squeezed the life out of his neck. And within that time, 2 minutes and 53 seconds, George Floyd was unresponsive. He was dead. His last words were, "I can't breathe." He called for his deceased mama. And to the bystanders, he was saying, "These guys are gonna kill me." It's just clear, it's obvious that Derek Chauvin is a racist, but the other 3 officers, and as of yesterday, they were charged as well for aiding and abetting a murder in the 2nd degree and manslaughter. They were complicit. They stood there and watched it happen. So it's not enough that they were not racist, but passive is violence in itself. In this case, it was far, far more important for them to be anti-racist. They had the opportunity to save the life of George Floyd from being strangled by their colleague, and instead they chose to do nothing. Silence is violence. From a Black man's perspective, the knee was a metaphor. That's why it hurts so much. No matter how successful, how educated, how charming, how positive we may be, no matter what we do, it feels like we have a knee on the neck from the oppressor. To be non-racist is not enough. Let me repeat that. To be non-racist, it is not enough. We all need to be anti-racist. When we need somebody, anybody, to pull the knee off the neck of those that are being discriminated against. We need you to take the knee off the neck when you see racist behavior happening in front of your eyes. We need anti-racist activists from all walks of life, whether you're Black or white, brown or Asian, male or female, gay or straight, able or disabled. We need you to be an activist. And believe me, I get it. Being an activist is not easy. A conversation about race is not easy. That's why Andrea said this is a courageous conversation. We all don't have the right words. We don't have the right terminology. We don't want to offend anybody. This webinar is already uncomfortable. But change does not come from comfort. We must be uncomfortable to shake up the status quo in society today. When we practice anti-racism, we begin to unearth systemic racism. Systemic racism has been obscured by the platitudes of a passive society. And we don't have to look too far to see the statistics. We're still in this pandemic, right? And in the US, where Blacks make up 16% of the population, they made up 26% of the death during this time. This speaks to the disproportion in healthcare. When it comes to employment, 16.7% of Blacks are unemployed compared to 14.2% of white population. And it gets worse. 11.9% of Blacks are in the workforce, yet they are 17% of the essential workers. This includes grocery store clerks, warehouse workers, post office workers, cleaning services, healthcare, childcare, social services, and they make less money. Get this, on average, Black workers get paid 73 cents on the dollar for white workers. The typical Black household has 1/10 of the wealth of the typical white household. White household average wealth is 171,000, while Black household wealth is on average at 17,600, 1/10. Smaller earnings and less savings make it difficult to build wealth and get through tough times like this pandemic. And to compound the problem, names that are Black sounding are less likely to get an interview. In the US, some Black people with university degrees are not necessarily saved by systemic racism because a white person that hasn't even graduated high school has more wealth than them at times. Now, I understand that was a bit of a rant. And I must say, I gotta be honest, many corporations are jumping on the bandwagon and are speaking out against racism, which is hopeful. There is an awakening happening, and we're starting to get a sense of the urgency of now. But the truth is, the hard work hasn't started yet. How many corporations will stick around and actually do the work? One of my favorite entertainers, Diddy, he made a post 2 days ago. You can catch it on his Instagram. And he wrote, and I quote, "To our friends, clients, partners, and industry as a whole, we appreciate you joining the revolt, but just know this isn't a one-time thing. This is a battle we face as a community every single day of our lives. This is not a one-day event for us. We welcome you joining the fight, but only if you are fully committed." End quote. What we need to do is we need to hold each other accountable. We need to become activists in our own lives, in our jobs, and in our communities. The reality is Black people can't be the ones to change the problems by non-Black leaders. Changing systemic racism involves more than just a tweet, a black box on Instagram, or a hashtag. It will involve difficult, courageous conversations, including non-Black leaders and brave souls around the world that will keep the conversation going, even when it's not sexy to do so. This leads us to examine our own souls, our own behaviors, and where we have influence. We must look in the mirror to make the change. Here's a quote from one of my favorite people in the world, Barack Obama. He said, and I quote, "Change will not come if we wait for some other person or if we wait for some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek." End quote. So today I'm gonna ask you a philosophical question, and truly take a moment and envision what a world without racism could look like. What is the world you want to create? Now that you have that vision, what are the behaviors of an anti-racist person? This type of person is kind, they're compassionate, they empower others, they lend a hand, and are bridge builders to others regardless of the color of their skin. Now ask yourself, what are the places that you have influence? Your family, your friends, your workplace, your government, even the places you do business. You can affect these people and these places with your good word, your good deed, your hard-earned dollar, and your passion. You are the creator and catalyst of change. It starts with you. At the top, I told you about the story of being accused of stealing weights for no apparent reason. But if we're honest with ourselves, we know what the reason was. It's because of the color of my skin. And that could have been prevented. The security guard could have approached me. He could have simply asked me, hey, you know what? I know you work out often. We seem to be missing weights. Have you seen anybody that might have taken them? And I would have said, no, but you know what? I'll protect the exercise room. I will keep my eye out. It is better to ask instead of to accuse. He also said that it was his colleague that thought I stole the weights. Well, if that was true, he could have called it out right then and there and told them that racially profiling and accusing someone is just not right. The property manager, instead of her minimizing what I was saying and truly not listening to me, she could have simply shown empathy, had a conversation with either myself or even her staff about discrimination, instead of sweeping it under the rug. She had a choice, like we all do. And the choice is not black or white. It is a matter of right or wrong. And better yet, in this moment, you have a choice. You can simply be non-racist, or you can be anti-racist. You can be an activist and help create the change we so desperately need in the world today. Thank you. We have a few minutes. I'll take a few questions. And before I do that, we will be back tomorrow. I am hosting our sense-making conversation starting tomorrow at 12:30. I'll have a special guest, and I am looking forward to it. So thanks again. Andrea?
Thank you so much, John. That was really incredible. We actually do have a question from Nicole here in Toronto, and she's asking, and it's such an important question, which is, how do you handle self-care on a daily basis as a Black man in Canada? She goes on to say that as a Black woman, it's my biggest challenge because it can be so emotionally draining.
It can be very emotionally draining. Nicole, thank you so much. There are reports that every time there is police brutality, or if we even witness discrimination, it does play a part into the mental health of the community. I'll be honest, when I found out about the George Floyd killing, as we all did, I was heartbroken, and I had mental health issues for at least 40 hours. We're still going through it. So what do we do about self-care? The best thing to do is not to have it so internalized. Have someone that you confide in, that you could talk to, and speak your true emotions. If you're feeling sad, if you're feeling angry, let it out. And then after you've gone through that natural process, if there is someone that you could educate, if there's someone that you could empower, all of that is very healthy, necessary, and it's just so important that we're cognizant of these things that we can do.
Thank you, Nicole, and thank you, John. We also have another question from Mark Madison, who is asking, what are some of the ways you are encouraging your non-Black friends to participate in being anti-racist?
Great question, Mark. Thank you so much. And we all have non-Black friends. And right now, what's happening, I mentioned in my talk earlier that there is an awakening. In Martin Luther King's famous speech, I have a dream, everyone remembers him saying, I have a dream, and that was great. But probably the most important line there was the awakening and the urgency of now. And I feel like non-Black people actually get it. The thing about this particular incident is that it's just so obvious. It's no longer about what did he do leading up to the video, or just any excuses around it. So what I absolutely appreciate is non-Black people understanding with empathy, having a conversation, starting off by saying, okay, you know what, I didn't get it. And that's not a bad thing. I didn't get it, or I didn't fully understand. Help me, what can I do? And the best thing to do in order to help is, again, use your voice, use your deeds, use your good word in your own sphere of influence, whether it be your workplace, your family, your friend, or the places you do business with. Thank you for joining the fight, all my non-Black friends. I see your fists too. And thank you for joining the march. We so appreciate it.
Thank you. We are at time, so we do have a couple more questions, but what I want to encourage everyone who's here today is to come back and join us tomorrow. We are going to continue this conversation. John will be welcoming a very special guest. He is deciding on who that special guest will be because he has many people that he would like to be bringing on to that conversation. And I'm actually really looking forward to continuing this. The reality is, we as non-Black people, I myself want to know how I can join in to help fight this systemic racism and how to be an anti-racist. Some of what John has helped us to understand today, I will be impacting or will be putting into my life right now. But there's more I think that we need to know. And it's not a matter of one talk or one conversation. It is an ongoing thing. And we're not going to get it right the first time, as John said. And these are going to be uncomfortable conversations, but we have to continue them. So join us tomorrow, 12:30. Same place, John with a special guest, and we're going to hear more on this. I think, John, you have one more thing you'd like to add.
Thank you, Andrea. This is not a one-time conversation. This is a revolution. We're going forward, guys. So let's keep going.
All right. Thank you again for your attention, for your time, and for the care and concern that you have shown today for this incredibly important topic of anti-racism and the systemic racism that is happening within our society. Have a beautiful day. We'll see you tomorrow.